Human activities have been identified as the primary cause of climate change, resulting in various problems such as increased flooding and, in severe cases, drought. In Nigeria, numerous communities located in low-lying areas frequently face the challenge of devastating floods. In this report, Esther Omopariola examines the impact of this climate change phenomenon on a section of a Lagos community and explores how the affected individuals are adapting to this new reality. Well, this is as NEMA Director General met with some state governors at the Nigeria Governors Forum Secretariat in Abuja.
Weeks, major cities across the country have been experiencing flash floods due to heavy rainfall. The National Emergency Agency has issued an alert warning residents in states susceptible to this disaster and urging those living in low-lying areas to relocate to higher ground. Here in Lagos, several low-lying areas within the metropolis regularly battle with floodwaters whenever the rain starts, leading to the submersion of numerous communities. Whenever it rains, it pours, and for residents in this locality, the flood situation here has become a usual occurrence due to shallow drainage system and poor infrastructure. While some have devised means to adapt to the situation, others call on the authorities to come to their aid. With tools in hand, Bright creates his own drainage channel to support the construction of his shop, where he plans to sell his goods.
Like me and my sister, we are selling clothes here, sandals, boxer, singlet and t-shirts. So because of the water over there, at times, maybe if rain is falling, we cannot be able to come and open our shop. And anytime that rain falls, we cannot be able to come to shop. Like we spend like 3 days before we can be able to come and do our shop. So we now gather some money to collect some portion of land over here.
Many traders in this area have devised their own strategies to continue their businesses, despite the challenging circumstances which have also negatively impacted their daily sales. For them, it is a constant struggle.
If it rain for like 2 days, 3 days, it can come up inside the shop. And the water, they remain like 4 days, 5 days, 1 week, more than 1 week. So permanently here, no, they dry. The water, no, they finish inside here.
However, the government states it is actively working towards addressing some of these concerns, but it emphasizes that it requires collective efforts from all stakeholders.
God has created a natural drainage system called the water cycle. When rain falls, half of that, 50%, is supposed to go into the ground. The ground is supposed to be the biggest drainage infrastructure. It's a sponge, supposed to soak up. But because we have all cut off the trees, we've taken away 40% of storage, we've sealed the ground, taken away another 50% of infiltration. What we have is that we're now throwing out 100% of rain runoff into the public space. No channel can have that capacity. So we are now taking it a step further. We are introducing what we call sustainable urban drainage systems.
While the government acknowledges the need for action, it is crucial for all stakeholders to unite and prioritize robust infrastructure and sustainable practices. By working collectively, we can mitigate the effects of climate change and build a more resilient future for all communities affected by these environmental challenges. Esther Omopariola, TVC News, Lagos.
An environmentalist, Desmond Maje-Kodome, joins me now for more on the impact of flooding in communities. Thank you for joining us on TVC News at 1. Well, as it is, many Nigerians are actually yet to recover from the devastating impact of last year's flood. Let's begin with your assessment of how the country managed the flooding in 2022.
Well, unfortunately, we could have managed it a lot better generally all around the country, especially in the upstream areas where the rivers are natural carriers of excessive water. But if you allow the rivers and the streams to get filled up with sand because too many trees and bush has been cut on the embankment, then the rivers will not have the capacity to carry as much water as they should have. And then when you consider that there's heavier rain coming because of climate change, this is a very serious matter. Those rivers need to be dredged, and the bush and the trees on the embankments need to be kept intact, because guess what? Heavier rains are definitely coming.
Indeed,
As we're talking now,
Indeed, Mr.
yes, as
Majekodun.
we're talking now, we're very sure heavier rains are coming.
Yes, heavier rains are coming because the 2023 flood predictions are out. And it's quite scary because you just wonder how these states are going to manage the situation, considering that, I mean, last year is just still very fresh in our memories. So what practical steps, I know you've started listing them, but let's take it further. What practical steps can be taken to help the situation?
Yes, well, the practical steps is, first and foremost, floodplains. People should not be allowed to develop their dwellings on the floodplains. Those are the areas which will become flooded. They've always become flooded from time immemorial. Step number one, no building on floodplains. Step number two, ensure that the dredging is done in time and protect the embankments of the rivers. And also, as came across in that wonderful report from Esther, we, in our building, in our constructions, in our compounds, we have to make sure that we still allow water that falls to penetrate into the ground, because nature has a perfect system of addressing this situation. The ground, the soil absorbs the water, it goes into underwater aquifers, and it gets moved away. But also, particularly in Lagos, we need to be very, very careful with what we do with the mangroves, okay? The swamp areas. We have a lot of mangroves, and these are the most natural way that nature has developed and evolved to absorb the excess water. These mangroves should not be sand-filled unless it's done under very, very strict specification. And if it is sand-filled, they should assess, okay, this mangrove could maybe run off X amount of water, and the kind of drainages that should be put in there should be adequate enough to at least fulfill most of the role that the mangrove would have done. But it's all up to us. Nature is shouting out at us. Do you know that last week,
Yes,
3 first days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, were recorded as the hottest days ever recorded on planet Earth. That is the average temperature of this planet, the hottest days ever recorded. We were lucky in Lagos and Nigeria. We're having rain, so it wasn't so hot here. But in some parts of the world, they're experiencing unprecedented heat. And this was predicted by scientists 30 years ago, that if we continue using the atmosphere as a garbage dump for our CO2 pollution, we're going to do this. So it's a wake-up call to all of us, to nature, to Nigerians, to Lagosians, to come together and solve the problem. We can do it. And also, finally, don't throw things into the drain. Loma is trying hard enough to just clear up the dust, the rubbish that we have. The drain is not a rubbish heap. The drain is for water. And you, by throwing some plastic into the drain, might be just the one that will be responsible for a flood that will now go and drown some children. And this will be on your conscience, but not only that, it'll be on your soul. So please, please, please don't allow anybody to be throwing plastic in the drains, plastic on the ground. We have a role to play amongst ourselves.
Very important, Mr. Majekodun, because the rate at which people do this is so disturbing. And importantly, too, each time the drains are cleared, I think effort should be made to clear whatever has been taken off the drainage, not to leave it hanging by the drain such that it returns into the gutters. I mean, because that's what we see happen. All right, I really hope we get it right. And we are able to manage the situation this year so that we don't record the loss of lives like we did this past year. It's been great talking to you, environmentalist Desmond Majekodun. Thank you very much for joining us on TVC News at 1.